found IPSL. They were connected to Concordia, and I was like, that's really great because I work with Concordia often with a lot of community projects. They're a cool college. And oh my gosh, wow, this website is so amazing. Not only do they provide community organizing, social activism classes, 3-month class just in Guatemala, or these kinds of things. They have these one-offs where you can just use AmeriCorps money to pay for those. But then I was looking through it and there were just so many things. I was like, but I want to do, maybe I don't go learn Spanish in Colombia. Maybe I want to learn about public health in Tanzania. Oh, there's so many neat programs. And also something that was very important to me was that most of the funds that they use go directly into the communities they're serving in. So this is dreamy because I want the kind of travel experience where I'm traveling, but I'm taking classes and I'm learning about the culture in a very kind of academic way. And I'm then getting an elective, like learning Spanish at the same time, like again in a structured way, but then I'm also surrounded in it. And there's an element of service, and they kind of connect you with this. They know, and it's the people on the ground, and your professors are local professors. And I was just like, this is exactly what I've been dreaming of. Hey,
This podcast series is sponsored by IPSL Global Engagement. And I had no idea about this organization and wish I would have known about them after my service year. Because you could take your AmeriCorps experience international. You can customize social justice-focused master's program in international development and service or community organizing and social activism. You can chart your path to create positive change in the world. Serve and learn with international organizations working to build justice in healthcare, education, human rights, the environment, and more. You can earn a master's that opens countless opportunities, gain the practical skills and community-based development to be an active agent of change. If this is something that's interesting to you and you are an AmeriCorps alum, click down in the description box below and sign up and get some more information today. Thank you, IPSL Global, for supporting the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. All right, you're going to read us something. Zandy?
This is Ithaca by C.P. Cavafy, and I do not know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so forgive me. This is it. As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Lastrygonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon. Don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. Lastrygonians, Cyclops, wild Poseidon. You won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can, and may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for, but don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean.
Holy smokes, that does reflect on an AmeriCorps year.
Right?
Oh,
it's so incredible. Like, you'll set out on one thing and then it gives you all of these other gifts, like your harbors you've never seen. And then by the time you're finished or completed or achieved, or you get the education award, it's like, that's not even what it's about. I have some sort of wisdom or perspective that's now leading me a whole other way. I love that poem, and that's what I think about when I was reflecting today on the America journey, because it's been a long time, and I started a little bit older too, but it was a long time ago when I started.
You said you did state and national, right?
Yeah.
What was your program, and where did you serve?
My program was called Partnerships for Student Achievement, and it was a local program out of Washington County, which is right outside of Portland, outside of Multnomah, Portland, Oregon. It served different cities. It was like there was like bedroom cities of Portland, like Hillsborough, Beaverton, Aloha, Forest Grove, which was where we also, as part of our program, our cohort got to take college classes at the university in Forest Grove. But it was a program where it was about creating community partnerships for student achievement. And it was kind of like a light Teach for America, where people, and we were placed at different 20 schools that had written grants to get an AmeriCorps member. High needs, 100% free and reduced lunch schools, all very different from elementary, middle school, high school. And it was all within Washington County. And then they received an AmeriCorps member and got to be like, this is what we need. I was placed at a Spanish immersion elementary school that was the recipient of Somali refugees and Somali Bantu refugees during the Civil War in Somalia. So they actually, even though they were a Spanish immersion school, they were hit with a big wave of Somali and Somali Bantu refugees. So that was actually the majority of their population, which was really interesting because you've got Somali, you've got Somali Bantu. They speak totally two different languages. One is not even written. And then they're learning English, but it's a Spanish immersion school. And there was like a big Latinx community as well. So it was like really fascinating. And when I remember when I applied for this program, you kind of got a little snapshot of all the different schools. And then you'd say like, what was your top choice and your second, and you'd interview with them. And it was Barnes Elementary, and they were my top choice. So it was really great that then it was like a match. It was like, we went on like speed dating. They're like, we chose you and I chose you. So it was really great. And then I had a cohort, which was incredible.
Yeah.
Which we all know that community is so important. And like, I think, when we think of a school, I think of a school of dolphins, they learn together, they learn with each, like in a multi-generational setting. And so it was truly a schooling because we would meet like every other week for a couple hours, our cohort. And so we got to hear what everybody else was doing and problem solve. And then our supervisor was really amazing at bringing in leaders and mentors to come and talk to us, like Theater of the Oppressed, the professor who's teaching about education, trends in education. Somebody comes in and gives us a tutorial on behavior management, stuff we needed, but also for our own development and growth. And the discussion was rich. And also I hear you, I'm going through that.
Yeah.
Thing. So that was the program that I did for a year. But then I did AmeriCorps again the second year in a totally different, not totally different, but a different program within Multnomah County.
And what was that? What was that program?
That was still state and national, and it was run under the American Red Cross. And it was had a focus on like anti-poverty. And I applied to be at a K-8 school. So when I was at Barnes, and as these journeys do, I had originally wanted to do Teach for America, like in college.
Okay.
And got really inspired to do that. I'll back up a bit for a second. In college, I was like majoring in English and psychology. Like, what are you going to do with that? Like, totally stuff unless you're like continuing on with grad school. And then Teach for America came to our school to recruit, and I was so inspired, especially about the message of closing the gap, the education gap, leveling the playing field, just themes of justice. And so I was like, I really want to do Teach for America. And I set like all of my eggs in that basket. And then I made it to like the last round and I didn't get it. And I'm so glad I didn't. And often it's those mistakes that like led me somewhere. But because I didn't, somebody was like, one of my good friends was like, don't do something like that. And, chain yourself up for 2 years. You're right out of college. Spread those wings. And so he inspired me. He's like, you should travel. Like, go to other cultures, visit with other cultures, other spaces. Like, this is the time, and you can still do that in a way where you're serving. And so anyway, I decided to do the teaching English abroad. And I was like, well, English language is a big access point. It creates opportunities around the world because it's like it is the most spoken language of Spanish. And so I ended up not doing Teach for America, and I went and lived in Thailand for a year and a half and taught there. And so a lot of teaching experience. I really opened my eyes about living in a completely different culture founded on Buddhist values. Even the language doesn't even have the future tense or past tense. It's all present, like the way it was so cool. And then I came back, and And then I kind of felt like, oh, all my peers are now not in entry jobs. They're moving along. And I came back, I'm still coming out of college. Like I did all of this stuff. I lived abroad and I had a job and I worked with elephants and all these things. But I came back and I was just like, now I just have to like do it again in America. And I had some friends who had done America, and I came back with this like passion in my heart, even more like, okay, I served in Thailand and Cambodia, and I did some work in Cambodia and Vietnam, and I was like, I need to go to my own backyard, and that how you want to go out there, you got to go inward, or it's like even you can look at it as a micro level, like if I want to have great relationships, I need to fix the inside. So I was like, I really want to serve back in my own community. So I came back, and then that's how I applied to do that. So I had some teaching background and so I came back being, okay, I'll do this. I'm interested in this partnerships for student achievement because I want to be a classroom teacher still, because I was a classroom teacher in Thailand with 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. And I really enjoyed it. And there was craziness too. But when I was at Barnes, I realized I did not want to be a classroom teacher in a public school.
Yeah.
I saw systemically how hard that was and how challenging it was. But I also then got to view a whole other world, which was the extended day programming. And so they have these county funded programs in Portland, or Multnomah County, it's called SUN, Schools Uniting Neighborhoods. It's a big community school movement all over the nation. And counties normally fund it through nonprofits that are culturally responsive. If there's a big Latinx community, like maybe the Latino Network, which is a nonprofit here, will get those funds from the county and then put it into programming that is all through extended day. Maybe it's tutoring during lunch. Maybe it's dance classes before school starts, or it's a whole array of programs after school. It's the whole summer program. And it's community. It's the whole idea, the movement is to turn schools into community hubs, which I really love because these are public buildings and I'm all about the commons. So it was like tiered. It was like, yes, we're going to provide lots of learning opportunities for the children, but it's the village that is important for a children's growth, like for a child's success. It's the village. So we'll have a parent university, ways for parents to connect and have power in their children's decision making. And not the PTA, the normal folks maybe who feel like they don't have certain feelings about walking into an institution or a school. Really create opportunities for true voice and decision making for parents and for community members. So that was part of SUN, creating programming like that. And then also basic needs. So creating a whole resource hub within the school for DV, for food pantries, clothing swaps, getting connected with rental assistance, all that. So I didn't even know those existed. In running the community garden often is under that. And so where I was at Barnes, they had it was called Cafe. No, it was called Shine, because they were building it off of SUN. So SUN actually stands for something, schools, neighborhoods, and Shine was just like, oh, we're going to do what they're doing in multiple. And so part of my service at Barnes was like, I was there the whole day. I was like pushing in and out with math tutoring and like helping out with kindergarten classes and did a lot of stuff during the school day. But then after school, 2 days a week, I taught for Shine. And depending on the term, it was like puppetry or theater or brain games. I did tennis once. There was an injury in that. We're doing in the gym. But they offered like all kinds of different, I was like, this is amazing. And this is where I'm seeing a lot of the kids that I see during the school day, like experiencing the ratios were smaller. It was a younger group of adults with them that were closer to their age. And it was like I was learning too at the same time when we were doing our cohort stuff, like the importance of adult assets in children's lives. And it was just like, oh, this is another way where we can do that. And so that's where I learned about like Shine. But then the other 2 days a week while I was at Barnes, I started just going to there was a main apartment complex where all of the Somali and Somali Bantu families lived. And a lot of like my mission there when they got me on there, like, we really want you to work with this community. And they had a community room. And this is where all of them were living in one apartment complex. And so I started this I think the person before me, there was like a homework club there. And so I just went in and like built on it, because a lot of the refugee kids grew up in refugee camps, didn't really have like a way of like, just like they weren't normalized to like, oh, how to be in a classroom, or, it's just like, I'm going to pick up those scissors. I feel threatened. There was a lot of interesting stuff. And like
Yeah.
in learning like math concepts that are like totally foreign when you look at the world in a different cosmology with numbers, and even language when it's not a written thing. There were so
Yeah.
many fascinating aspects that, and their parents couldn't help them with homework because they didn't know any of this stuff. So we set up a homework club, and also we brought it to them. We weren't going to be like, oh, you have to stay at the school and do this homework club. Like, we're going to make this as accessible as possible. So I rented out the community room twice a week. I almost did it 3 times a week. I loved homework club, and I was there for 3 hours, and it was cool because this was an element where I got to learn how to build a program, and did at all of the local high schools and like senior citizens for volunteers can you help? Because I was learning that 1-to-1 ratios, 1-to-2 ratios, really powerful for tutoring and homework. And I really wanted to build that. And so for 2 days a week, I did that. And for 2 days a week, I did the Shine classes. And I learned the power and the joy in the extended day programming, and how much more that's like an access point for community and the trains of the children. So that led me to apply for AmeriCorps again for Sun Schools in Portland, because I was living in Portland. And so I was like, I want to do that. So it's the Sun School program, and they're one of the Sun Schools needed an AmeriCorps, like a program coordinator, like an assistant to the director. So I did that for a K-8 school, and that was just like really learning more programming, how to run this. And then my supervisor, actually, she was pregnant and had to leave for the last 3 months. So I really had to step into a director role.
Wow.
And I learned so many programmatic things, and not totally, I didn't do the payroll or the budget because I think would have been against AmeriCorps rules, but in terms of like training and managing, and I was working with a big gap, like kinders and pre-kinders to 8th graders.
No.
Yeah. And that was an area where it was a school in a neighborhood that was in the midst of gentrification.
Oh,
And
wow.
so a lot of culturally responsive programming, like the Black Parents Initiative, Courageous Conversations. And a lot of our older kids were Black, and a lot of our upcoming kids, white, and also not free and reduced lunch. There was this very interesting story be told about the neighborhood. And it led to very important conversations and how we run programming and talk about equity and how it's different than equality, and having conversations where we isolate race and we talk about that. There was a lot of training in that, and that was really beautiful to open my eyes to privilege, especially racial privilege. And in AmeriCorps in general, I think we learn about living in situational poverty, and we often are in communities where generational poverty is going on, or we're experiencing both. And I think that just built on my view of it working at the Sun School, the Sun School program. And then that ended up leading into a job. And then I was a Sun School manager at a different school for 5 or 6 years. So it gave me the path. I was working in Sun for a really long time.
Yeah. So Teach for America was going to be your Ithaca, but there was another way of getting to where you were trying to go. And
Exactly.
they don't even know where when I'm not doing the podcast or working in my 9 to 5, I'm listening to a lot of conspiracy theories and esoteric and stoic stuff. And one of the things that I always find interesting is to your point about where was it? Thailand it only has present tense. It doesn't have past and future. I can't come up with I love your word magic. Your visualization of things is really fun to listen to. I'm not as eloquent as that, but I always say when I've done something in my past that sets my future self up for success, I'm always like, I'm so glad that my past self thought about my future self.
Totally. But past self makes a little lunch bag for yourself, for your future self. It's like, here you go.
Exactly. You're going to need this. You're going to need this. I love that. And then a lot of times we don't know why we're learning the lessons that we're learning, right? Like why we have to go through something, or not even necessarily hard, but learning something or recognizing something or reading something or diving into whatever. And then we find out a couple months later, we're either supporting a friend or we're put on a project where we're like, oh wait, I know how to do that. And so I love that way of thinking. I wanted to just also circle back to something that you said about you thought you wanted to be a teacher, but then you were in this setting and you're like, actually, I really want to be a support. I think hands down, if you're listening to this podcast and you're either thinking about AmeriCorps or you're in your AmeriCorps year and you might be a little disillusioned where you were like, well, I thought I really wanted to do this, but I don't. That's what AmeriCorps is for. And I'm just going to double down, I think, for the year of 2025 on this statement of number one, your AmeriCorps year is a term of what?
Being an experimenter.
Being an experiment only, there's short terms, summer terms, all the way up to 1 year terms. Use this to learn and experiment, like you said. Am I good at this? And what is this language or whatever? And so I love that you said that you wanted to originally go in as teaching, but you realized that you could actually have more of an impact. And doing before and after school programs, you can have more of an impact because you can have a different relationship with that student.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And also I liked it because I felt like I had more also like in terms of what like sphere of impact and like in decision making is important too. And I felt like in those areas, I as like like an after school teacher, and it's not that I didn't want to be a teacher. I just learned that I didn't want to be a classroom teacher. But I still enjoyed teaching and program building and content building. All those things around teaching and education is so important. I do think it is a pillar of power in a way that we can one of the ways we can level the playing field.
And I think also something that I've said before is that I'm going to say low stakes, but I don't mean it as in it's whatever, I can do whatever I want during my service year, or it's not difficult. But you're not applying for a job. You're not committing to an employer that you may be here indefinitely. You're saying, I'll be here for, 3 months, 1 year, whatever the term is, 2 years, whatever. And then we'll see where we are. And I feel like I actually feel now in 2025, moving from 2020 to 2025, that actually the work environment's a little bit like that now too. So kudos on AmeriCorps for being ahead of the trend. Because I do think shifting from talking about national service to actually talking about employment, I think we do have to be realistic about like, when we're all on our best behavior, when you're being interviewed or you're interviewing, we're all like, these are the best parts of our organization and this is the best part of me. And then when you get into it, you're like, yeah, this isn't a great fit, or this isn't what I want to do or how I want to utilize my time. So you're a guest from the ISPL Global Engagement Association or organization. And so I do want to round out your service year for sure. But this is an organization that they reached out to me at the end of 2024. And we're doing this special series where we're highlighting members, AmeriCorps alum, who have leveraged their education awards through IPSL to have these really customized 16-month or shorter stints in focusing on social justice master's programs. I was so sad.
I'm laughing. I was like, down. I've used it has been really funny, and I'll tell you the story. But it is amazing what you teach.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, if I would have known about this, I would have totally did it. I just threw my Siegel Education Award to my student debt. If I would have known that IPSL Global existed when I finished my service year, I would have jumped on that so quickly.
I didn't get hired by the site, but because Sun School Programs is such a big network, so I was like, school, and it was a K-8 school, and it's like confusing, like all of the Sun School programs. There's probably like 80 Sun Schools within Multnomah County, and then they are run through different nonprofits. So I was working, my nonprofit for that program as an AmeriCorps member was IRCO, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization. And at the time, they had 7, I think, Sun Schools that they were running and providing programming for. And one of their other schools ended up hiring at the end of summer. And it was known to be one of the more intense schools. It was like 1 year term Sun School managers. Like the directors just kept, it was like 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. And I heard about it and I was like, wow, that is really intense. And I saw everything a director did. And I was like 20, I don't know, like 5 or something. I didn't really, I felt like too young. Like I hadn't seen, and most of the people who had that position had masters in social work. It was like an MS job. So it was a big reach job. But my supervisor, who had come back from being pregnant and stuff, she was like, you should apply for this, Zandy. You should apply for this. I will give you a reference. And it was through IRCO. So I was hired by the same organization, but a totally different site, totally different population of children. It was it was a Spanish immersion, like the one in Barnes, but Sabin was not Spanish immersion where I had just done Sun. And it was a bunch, the community was almost like fully Latinx and very like, it was like 2-to-1 Spanish immersion classes. So I really, it was deeply enriched and with Latinx culture and totally different needs. And it was a K-5. And then I ended up staying there for 5 years. But yeah, 5 years. And then that is right around when I found IPSL and was like, it's about time I used. Yes. So that kind of finished up in a space where I like needed to leave because it was, it was something that I wish I would have learned more about in AmeriCorps. And I feel like we didn't focus on it, especially that first year. I was like, if they could have taught us some skills, I really wish we would have learned a lot more about protection around burnout. And compassion fatigue. I didn't even know those existed. So I was like, I just want to use this money. Honestly, I just want to travel. I think travel is so enriching. It feeds my mind. It feeds my spirit. It feeds my soul. Like traveling in a way where I can do service. Like what I did in Thailand. I want to do long term. And I was like, how can I use my AmeriCorps money to do that, basically?
Hey, sorry to interrupt this interview, but I wanted to shoot you over to some of the IPSL experts so you can get a better understanding about the program. We'll be right back with this interview, but take a listen. It might be something you're interested if you're an AmeriCorps alum or if you're interested in serving in AmeriCorps.
IPSL used to stand for the International Partnership for Service Learning. We are a founding organization in the service learning movement. Because service is at our core, that's a natural fit for AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps alums.
And specifically, I was like, I want to be learning a skill, like an important skill. And I was so like, when I was at that job, there was like a lot of trauma and secondary trauma. And so I associated Spanish with trauma. So I never learned in a fully Spanish, and all of my coworkers, all of the kids were bilingual. I never really needed to. I often specifically would hire an AmeriCorps member who was bilingual, who would help with translating. And it was like, I was like resistant to learning. It was super weird. And so I didn't learn Spanish. And I was like, I really want to learn Spanish. And I want to come back to my community. I want to be able to like connect deeper with the parents that I've been connecting with through translations and nonverbal communication. And so all I did is I typed like, learn Spanish, AmeriCorps travel, AmeriCorps, like the Skill Award, like just Googled it. Yeah. And I was like, and that's where I was like, I just had something opened up. And I was like, man, I really want to be in another college. I've been in America now for a long time and I need to, and I look at it as bumblebeeing, like pollinating, where I'll go abroad and then I'll come back and bring what I've learned here. Some people are trees and root, and that's important. We need the tree to stay in the community for a really long time. And I just feel like a bumblebee, like I need to also go to other, even if it's flowers in my city. Yeah. And then bring it back and be like, oh, this is an interesting way they do it here. I just think it's mind altering and consciousness expanding. And it's also benefits individually, like probably more than and also want to be conscious of like tourism and traveling. And there's a lot of harm in that. But anyway, so I wanted to do that. But I was looking for that, I couldn't find anything. And then I Googled, learning Spanish. How can I use my AmeriCorps award to learn Spanish in a different country? Like, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to travel and I wanted to be learning something. And with structure, I wanted play, but like within structure. And then I found IPSL, International Partnership for Service Learning, the Institute of Global Studies. And I was looking at their programs and they have just like one-offs. And what was amazing about them at the time, so they're a program and they partner with a college to be an accredited school so they can accept AmeriCorps funds. So when I found IPSL, they were connected to Concordia. And I was like, that's really great because I work with Concordia often with a lot of community projects. They're a cool organized college. And oh my gosh, wow, this website is so amazing. Not only do they provide community organizing, social activism classes, 3-month class just in Guatemala, or these kinds of things. They have these one-offs where you can just use AmeriCorps money to pay for those. But then I was looking through it and there were just so many things. I was like, but I want to maybe I don't want to learn Spanish in Colombia. Maybe I want to learn about public health in Tanzania. Oh, there's so many neat programs. And also something that was very important to me was that most of the funds that they use go directly into the communities they're serving. It's like, what kind of program is this? Is this like some higher ed that's going to take all the overhead and then be in there and be like white savior complex stuff? And who's making the decisions? I want to know who's making the decisions here and like, where are those resources going? And that's really, really important to me. And that was rad. So I liked that. And then I liked, and then I just was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. This is like everything I've dreamed of as like an explorer of the world, ninth house astrology kind of person, where it's like I just want to know about all the different languages and art and how do they do music here and the landscape and the animals. It was just like funny too because they have focuses. It's like in Colombia, learn about conflict studies, conflict resolution studies, or post-conflict resolution studies. In Peru, learn about indigenous and traditional ways of healing. In Greece, learn about immigrant refugee policy. And it was funny because I was like, I don't know. I mean, I want to do that all. I want to do that all. I've forgotten about even wanting to learn Spanish, but like probably like that would be a really useful skill. Let's not do the whole like major in English and literature. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put money in like let's come out with an actual practical skill. But when I was looking at it, they were like, hey, we love AmeriCorps members. So we match what you have, which I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
I had 2 AmeriCorps awards.
So that's almost $14,000.
So I had 11,000. No, it would have been like 22. So then I was like, they double it. And if I were to just use one of those, I could have done one of those programs. And I was like, oh my goodness, if I just get a little loan, which I've never done in my life. So maybe this is like a learning opportunity also to build like empathy for others and understand what
A big girl opportunity.
Everything's like a learning and compassion and becoming more connected to humanity. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could do a full master's program. So not only would I get to, and it wasn't really that I wanted the master's, it was that I wanted to do a curated, take away all that like, I do a lot of planning, but before this, I traveled I did a lot of traveling and backpacking. And like, even when I was working on summers, I'd go to Cuba or Costa Rica and stuff. And there's a lot of work and you spend a lot of time in the place trying to, and this is pre-smartphones in a way. So I kind of was like, this is dreamy because I want the kind of travel experience where I'm traveling, but I'm taking classes and I'm learning about the culture in a very kind of academic way. I'm then getting an elective, like learning Spanish at the same time, like again in a structured way, but then I'm also surrounded in it. And there's an element of service, and they kind of connect you with this. They know, and it's the people on the ground, and your professors are local professors, and I was just like, this is exactly what I've been dreaming of.
The best part for me, I think, is that this program is so unique. I really think of it as learning outside the walls of the 4 walls of a classroom, because you're learning in community, not only from professors, but also from scholar practitioners, the people that are actually doing the work in the field.
These are folks that are learning in communities abroad. How are they supported? How does the program support these folks that are serving?
Yeah, that's really important for us. We know from personal and also just from anecdotal experience that graduate programs can be quite isolating. You need support in order to maximize the benefit of your grad program. We know it's an investment. We know not only an investment of funds, but also time and energy. And so we want you to get the most out of it. We create this program to be small cohorts. And there's multiple points of advising from multiple people. You can choose your own advisors from people that you meet in community, and also through our staff and our professors.
And I'm like, I think why not? Because also, on the side, I can get a master's. But that didn't really matter. That wasn't my driving force at all. It was just like, I to explore the world. I want to build skills. I want to serve. I want to just get out of this, because I was in a pretty like dark, deep, like I had lost whatever got me into service sort of place after towards the end of those regular days. That was the school. And so anyway, I applied and I met with them and they were amazing. And so I did it. And I was lucky because this was pre-COVID, where like a lot of things have changed since then. And I was the last cohort. And it was really great. I also love a cohort. So
I love being a good cohort.
I love being in a cohort. I love having, it's like being in a litter or a school office or being in a public litter. You have that horizontal way of learning and reflecting, and it's really important emotionally, especially because IPSL is interesting, and you choose, and there's something cool about that because you really are the guide of your education. You're like, I want to learn about clowning, and I want to learn about it and let you know, okay, let's work on making this happen. And somebody else might be, my focus is I want to spend 2 semesters in China because I'm already going in. No, I've been writing and thinking about ESL or whatever. So there's different people who enter. Some people enter and they're like, I know what I want to do. I want to focus very specifically on the policy around immigration. And that is what I want to study. And then there's like people with me like, I don't even know what I want to do. So can I like dabble in it all? But it is hard because you are often alone and you'll have to make a lot of decisions because it's not just made for you. It's you got to be the guide, but then they do all the busy work and really help with the connections and the things that would take a lot of time and effort that is helpful.
And it's really charting your own path and creating positive change in the world. So I think you're speaking exactly to that.
Absolutely. And it's that reflection. It's like they call it like a three-pronged table. Like for it to stand, you need like the three legs. And then so it's like service is one piece. And then the classroom is the other piece, like it because you take classes while you are in the other country, but you are also serving in the other country. And then the third piece is reflection. So then you're working with someone back home or another professor there where there is space for reflection or with your cohort. And because you can have an experience with service, but it is so much more rich if you are understanding the culture and community and country and all the things that surround that. What's the root of it? The old proverb of who's throwing the babies down the river sort of thing. If you're doing this and you're picking out the babies, but you start to also understand taking the classes, like, oh, how this started happening, and that's why these children are falling in the river. Maybe that sounds weird for the podcast, but I'm sure a lot of people know
we actually in the very first interview of 2024, I interviewed Amanda McSwine, and we actually worked together. So I read a book called Upstream by Dan Heath, and he talks about that concept. And she says in the podcast, go back, I just posted a compilation for 2024. She goes, it's what you said, Nikki. You brought up the concept about like, why are people falling in the river? Like, we need to go upstream and figure out what's going on. Like I was going to say, and I've been asking everyone that I've been interviewing on this special sponsorship series is, and I think you're speaking to it, where suddenly you're seeing things through a different lens and you realize you're seeing things through a different lens. And I honestly think the whole world in 2020 going into 2021 started to like, if I take these glasses off, you're actually blurry, right? So we started to see things through a really different lens. And I think that's what you're speaking to with this experience, is that it's so well-rounded and it's so curated. And I think Thomas and Ariane really put that personal like support in there where it's okay, well, let's, like you said, I want to learn clowning in Colombia or whatever. Like, how can I be a clown, learn Spanish, and deliver whatever? And they're like, we'll figure it out. But you're doing it with locals, right? It's not like
they're the
American
expert. These are the experts. And
yes,
you're building reciprocity in that because these are folks who want to be in cultural exchange. Often you get to live with a family during this program. Cool. In a lot of situations, I was just talking with my mom in Colombia the other day, just texting, Happy New Year. And yeah, so there's something really, it's a really important, I think, because like the classes that you take make your service richer and you can be better at your service.
Mm-hmm.
The service really feed the classes because when you're having discussion, you and your cohort, if you're in there with a couple of people, it's like, well, yeah, actually, I saw an example of that today, or this.
Wow.
Those feed, but then that reflection piece is so important because you can have an experience, but if you don't integrate it, it just sits on a shelf like its own thing. It's like, how do I take that and process it and bring it back to my own life when this is a year-long thing, and then maybe I'll stay in Guatemala forever. I kind of wanted to at one point, but maybe I'll go back. How will I bring this into other ways where it's not just, oh, this is a memory set aside? So I really like that there is they value reflection and the interconnection of service and learning, and it's a respect too. I mean, nothing's perfect, but I think they put a lot of effort into, like, we did a 2-week residency. So when I joined, and it was in Portland, lucky me, I was the only Portlander, and there were 3 other people in my cohort who came, like, I think 2 of them came from like Pennsylvania and maybe Virginia. And we all had different things we were doing. And we had an intensive 2-week residency course. And the first things we learned were like, how not to be really problematic. And we learned, like, there's an article that they shared, it's waiting for tea. And it's just like ways of being in other cultures and not causing harm, and looking at the ways in which like so much of service learning can be really a duplicate of colonizing, extracting data, extracting experiences, taking information, making decisions based off of that, duplicating really problematic global south, global north relationships, not to we're going to countries in which a lot of their problems are systemically caused by a country that we are coming from. And so really they did, I think, a really good job of putting that in perspective, because it's so easy to it's to blindly be a tourist or be a traveler. And it's like the visitor has big eyes but sees nothing sort of thing. And so I really appreciated that. I think they put a big emphasis on, taking our egos away from this, and like, this is what will benefit, but you are not the expert in this. And like, just a lot of good learning about being culturally responsive and anti-oppressive. And so they did that. And we had a full week course in just learning the history. What is service learning? And what is the history of international service, and how to be a civic engaged person? So it was like intense. We were all together, we're doing these activities, and we got to exercise writing a research paper, which was something I hadn't done since college. And so I was really needing to practice that. And so we got to do that in the residency. And then we had a whole research residency that was an intensive. So we learned the elements of research. And that was it was fast and intensive, but it was needed, because some of us went in there like me, I haven't done that in a long time. And I think my worst experience going through the program was writing the research paper at the end.
It was before ChatGPT.
Yes, exactly. And my third semester was in Guatemala in the jungle. I was trying to always find internet, a bat would be flying at my head. And I'm trying, I barely ever had internet. It was really, really cool. And also excruciating, because I really did not want to be doing that while I was in the jungle in Guatemala. And it was it really served my writing and the research I was doing, because I could think about different community aspects, because I was designing a program. We had different options for our final project. But that was the bane, what was it? The bane for me was that I was never in it for that degree. But at the same time, I really enjoyed being in classes and doing those things, and they enriched my time there. So we did our residence course, and then we all went our separate ways. I went to Colombia because again, my focus was Spanish, and they had 2 countries at the time where you could take Spanish classes, among other classes. So I went to Colombia, and we were and then that was it was 2 different cities with that one, which is a different program. So 3 months in Colombia, but a month and a half was in Medellin, and then a month and a half was in Cartagena. And our partner at the time, which I do not think they're a partner in Colombia anymore, a lot of shifts, but that partner at the time was the language school. So they had a really good school, and so we could easily be taking Spanish classes, and it was super smooth from Medellin to Cartagena. And that was really funny, because 2 of my cohort members actually were in Colombia with me. Or one of them was, and then there was an undergrad, because IPSL also serves undergrads, does the year abroad.
Okay.
So he was in classes with us. So we had one undergrad, and then it was me and my cohort member. And so we had a different focus. We were taking some extra things. So it was just the 3 of us in classes all the time together. And we became caricatures of ourselves. I know so-and-so was going to say that something funny. I know Zandy's going to say something feminist. And then I know the young one is going to be I don't know. It was just so funny. We made fun of ourselves, because we just had gotten to know each other's opinions so much. And being the only female in that class, also being in Colombia, which there was a lot of machismo, I it just was I got really intense in that class. And I look back, and it was just who is that? But so anyway, every experience is different. So I did Colombia for 3 months. I really loved Medellin. Cartagena was hard for me, because I had bonded and started building community in Medellin. And I was going to language exchanges, going to shows, the art community. And then right when it takes about a couple weeks, and right when I was building that, it was time to head to Cartagena. We did have really cool classes. We took I remember the professor there, we took a community organizing and social activism class, which was amazing. I want to hit him up for his slideshows. He taught us about education. He was a really dynamic professor, such amazing talent. But Cartagena, and it was beautiful and swimming and everything, but it was also just, I remember it was a little challenging. personally because I just felt a little bit like solo. But then we had a little break for winter, went home. So I got to go like home and see friends and family. And then I went to Peru, the other Spanish speaking country. And that was like totally different. I was in a huge city in Cusco, staying with a family, and I was staying with, then there was a little girl there. So I stayed in her bedroom and she stayed with her parents. And I was like now building my Spanish. Like I had been in Colombia for 3 months. I've been living. And so she would always watch Disney movies. And it was the perfect way to learn Spanish because
Oh, sure.
hey. And so we were watching a lot of stuff like that. And so Search for Nemo and whatever. Olvido mi español cuando regresaré a Estados Unidos. It's like I've lost it now. I don't even know. Like it's been so long, but I was like getting more fluent and I was taking really fascinating classes. Like the partnership they have in Peru, I always tell people is like really, really interesting. Like this professor who's a farmer, but also teaches like a lot about the classes like shamanism and spirituality and religion and pre-Incan cultures. It was like stuff that just tickled my soul and my mind. And I got to like interview shamans and like, and it was amazing because I was really learning like the neurobiology of why we have religion and when spirituality and medicine split up and then turned into religion and medicine where they used to be combined, like all this really cool stuff. And then I was always taking really cool field trips with this other professor who was focusing on service. And he took me to like, I got to tour the fire station there, which was all volunteer led in Cusco, which is crazy. It's like doctors and stuff. And they're like, oh, now I'm done. Now I'm going to go like be at the firehouse if there's a fire tonight. Like dog sanctuaries, like all kinds of things. And that teacher also was very thorough and incredible at teaching me all kinds of different cultures in Peru and languages. And so he was teaching like the modern, like and community organizing and how they do it there and activism. And so those two professors, and then I had a really rad Spanish professor, and this is all solo. I was alone in Peru, totally. So but I ended up like making friends and found there was an alum there who ended up like marrying a guy and living there and living in Sacred Valley. So I got connected with her and then helped out with an organization she was starting there doing permaculture at an elementary school. And I ended up like doing Wachuma San Pedro with like one of the shamans. Like he invited me to do it with him and his children and his grandma. Very, very special, which was wild. And it was interesting because I had been to Peru like months before in Iquitos, and I had done like a whole month-long ayahuasca ceremony there, just in the jungle, fasting, doing ayahuasca. So I was like connected with plant medicine. I was really interested in that. I had done that like probably like 6 months before that. Was part of me like, okay, I left the job. Who am I, sort of thing. But anyway, so it was interesting though to work with a different medicine and do it in a way where he was speaking. There was the lead shaman who was speaking Cachical.
Okay.
Quechua. So I'm confusing it with the Guatemalan language, a Mayan language. Quechua, which is an Incan language. He was the main shaman was speaking that, and then that was being translated into Spanish to me. And so it was very interesting and when my brain was on this like really strong psychedelic, the San Pedro, and it was beautiful to be with this family doing it. It was just like such a wild experience, but that was the kind of experience, like I met him, that wasn't like part of the programming, but I made that relationship.
Right.
I interviewed him and he's like, and he invited me, and it was like, oh, sometimes you just got to accept the invitation.
Mm-hmm.
A great way to end my time in Peru. And I think and by the way, the Peru program, I ended up going to watch Machu Picchu 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
That would all like, I went one time, the program paid for a really cool tour. Because the supervisor of the program there, he like ran like a tour. They did these things and ran tours and stuff. So that was great. They set up things that would take me a long time or things I wouldn't know, or helped me plan things in Peru. And I would like have dinner with their family, even though I lived with my own family. So they helped with connections, but then they did that. Got to go to Machu Picchu as it was a part of my schooling. And then I had a friend visit who was a teacher I taught with in Thailand. Like we are big travel buddies. We went to the Great Wall of China together. We hadn't seen each other in a decade. He came out, and then he was like, I want to go to Machu Picchu. I was like, I've already been, but I'll go again. And so he paid for me to go. And then when my dad came out, I went to Machu Picchu. So, but I saw other amazing, incredible ruins just around the Cusco. But we did believe this is what I'm doing for like my schooling, getting a master's. And then right when I was in Peru, I was set up, by the way, my Ithaca for the program was Tanzania. that was like, I really want to go to Africa. I want to go to Zanzibar. And so I was like, that's what made me do the graduate program. I was like, I could do these Spanish programs, but I was like, if I get a loan, I could just do the whole master's program and I could go to Africa and like work with giraffes or I don't know that. But right in the middle of the Peru, they were like, hey, we have bad news. The Tanzanian program is going to be canceled next term. So are you open to being a guinea pig for our first ever program in Guatemala? We've been building this partnership. And it seems like you really like Central and South America and you're building your Spanish. And do you want to? They know I'm a big permaculture nerd, and which like it's like a philosophy that really like impacts a lot of the way I see the world, and house and service especially is like just enforce that. But it was at an Imicult, it was at a in Guatemala, it was like near Lake Atitlan in the middle of the jungle in a village. And it was at a permaculture institute. Um, and so I was like, you know, kind of sad, but it was like, hey, I'd been trying, you know, doing this program, doing service, doing all these things where it's like, you just have to go with the flow. And especially when you're traveling internationally, you learn to like, just let go of some expectations. Like that train's leaving it too, okay, you know? So basically I did that for my third semester, and the focus in Guatemala was incredible. And it was like sustainable agriculture and permaculture. And then it really gave me space because you have to work on your final cumulative, well, should be working on your cumulative project the entire time. But I was like, third semester, I really got to like work on it there. And like my first day in Guatemala, I meet my advisor and we take a Tamez call together. Like we're just like taking off our clothes and like putting different plant medicines into a boiling water. I mean, and that's like how I met my advisor. I mean, it was like a whole other world. We were like in the jungle, and I had been in the city, and I was kind of Cusco is like, you know, it's a big Disneyland. And so to just go there, I was like, this is actually a really good place for me to retreat by a lake, swim every day, maybe see, like sometimes I would just go days without seeing anybody because they had staff that worked there. But then on the weekends, it was just me and my advisor that lived there. And he was from El Salvador. And he was the one who completely set me on my way with my thesis. I was still very, very lost. I was like, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in that. Da, 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 da. And he was from El Salvador, and he worked with reintegrating gorillas. He was like intense, and he was radical. He was like, taught me all about the Beehive Collective, which I'll show you right here because I have the visual. Very anti-colonizer, the whole story. I don't know if you've seen these posters. Anywhere. I'm going to try to use it for my IPSL because, spoiler alert, I teach for IPSL now, but I use this talks about, it's like a big picture. It's a bunch of artists.
Okay.
Yeah. They're visual educational tools. So there's no words really. And it's talking about the story of colonization. And then what do we do? And what does the social activism look like? And what does civic engagement look like? And they don't use people in the pictures. It's all animals. But it's great because it visually shows you how the World Bank is connected to the Monetary Fund, connected to cruise ships, you know, and this, and then this is what's happening in this. It is. He taught me every day using that. We would have like insane conversation. And he taught me about participatory action research. He taught me about anti-oppressive research. He gave me a book, Research as Resistance. He taught me about Martín Bardot, which is this Jesuit priest activist from Spain who was like killed in El Salvador in the 90s, who wrote a really amazing essays about social psychology liberation. The service there was like getting up at 4 a.m. and building on the land in permaculture, and we were building a food forest. And then if I needed to get my groceries, so I wasn't staying with family this time, I'd have to walk through this giant avocado grove to a street, hitchhike on, be the tallest by far person on this truck. We were in Mayan villages. And to go into the nearest little village to then go to the market. And then it was like so interesting because I wrote about anti-oppressive research, participatory action research, and the power that comes from that, theater of the oppressed, consciousness raising activities, where it's like, what is the role of the social researcher if it's not to liberate? Scientists can speak about something, but like social scientists need to be transforming things and really just shifting these power dynamics. I mean, it was just like amazing. I wrote about a lot of stuff that I was passionate about, and I came back and then we gave our presentation, and they then this was 2019, and then towards the end of 2019 they were like, hey, our teacher Erin, who did the residency classes, she's leaving, she's doing something else. Like, we loved what all of the stuff that you brought up in your presentation, your thesis. Would you be wanting to take that role on? And so, yeah, and that's like really amazing when your thesis actually is even read by anybody else, by the advisor, and you get to like even use it. You have a thinking. And yeah, and then, but that happened 2019. And then I got set up with some undergrads and was doing online stuff with them, doing a COSA course. And yeah, 2020 hit. So we did it all online. So things shifted, but I did have students and I got to teach my first few classes, the grad. So I teach the research class now, the week-long residency research class. And then I teach the one about like, so what is service learning and history of that. So it's like a 2-week course, but it's very different now because it's just fully online. And we've been doing that since 2020.
But as we land this plane, Zandy, what would you like? So people that listen to this podcast, some of them are interested in AmeriCorps. A lot of people say that they listen to the podcast, they were either an AmeriCorps alum or they were fascinated by the content. So they just shared it with a niece or a nephew or a son or a daughter who was like, I don't know what to do with my life. And they're like, listen to all these people doing all these things with AmeriCorps. What are some takeaways that you want people to hear and listen to understand for number one, AmeriCorps, and then we'll close out with the experience with IPSL. What do people want to take away? So first, AmeriCorps.
Well, for AmeriCorps, I think often we graduate college, we graduate high school, and we're like, what do we do with our lives? And it's like, oh, I want this thing, but I don't have the experience or skills. But then how do I build those experience and skill? How do I build those experience and skills without doing the thing? And so I think AmeriCorps is that perfect place. There's individual benefits in terms of you will build a lot of skills that will help you in getting into employment, and you'll build perspective and you will learn so much about yourself. When you cultivate like a servant's heart, you're going to learn more about yourself. So you're going to be well suited to make better decisions about where your path is after AmeriCorps. And I don't think you can do AmeriCorps and not walk out with an expanded point of view about yourself and about the world.
Yeah. So with IPSL, what are the last things that you want folks to take away?
Gosh, with IPSL, I want people to, if you can make it happen. The best thing I think we can do for ourselves and for our world, if we do it in a very conscious way, is to put ourselves in cultural exchange service situations. I think we can learn. We are a global community. We are global citizens. And I think we can learn a lot from dropping what we know, unlearning our cultural programming, and being put in places that are very different. And so if you have the ability to do this program for a year, for 6 months, I mean, it's just exponential in what you will get out of it and what others will get out of it. And you don't even know. You really can't even imagine, because it is like the Ithaca, really what's going to happen if you just go into that. But highly recommend. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Well, thank you so much. I think that is a perfect way to end. I couldn't say more about IPSL, and I'm learning so much. And thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. And thank you all for listening, subscribing, sharing, commenting at all. It's really kind of a one-woman show here. I've got a little marketing team on the back end that helps promote the podcast, but this is I like to say it's my 5 to 11 and Saturday and Sunday gig. So thank you so much for listening to the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And we'll be back with another special series with the IPSL Global Engagement Program. Take care, everybody.